I think it's massive to learn from other areas, and a couple of months ago I was introduced to Dean over here, who served in the forces with James, and started hearing about the story. And there's, when it's the story, there's about 17 million of them that we're pleased to be able to be talking through this morning. Dean was in the Special Forces and has gone on to break numerous world records and some ridiculous challenges, and talks a lot about the Relentless Pursuit of Excellence. His book is out next week as well, which is quite exciting times for you, and that's going to be an amazing read. But so I've given you a little bit of input there, but do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about your background and what brings you here today?
Yeah, so my background, I was born into a military family, but it was never actually expected of me to join the military. So when I decided to tell my father that I was going to join the military, he told me I would last 2 minutes. Some people would probably take that information and just sit in the corner and dwell on it, but I actually used that as a strength. And I went on to the military. After 4 years, I'd done every arduous course that the military could offer: the commander course, PTI, diver course. I was a para. And so the only other option for me was UK Special Forces. As you get to know some of my stories, I like to prove people wrong, and I also like to go against the grain. So I was in the army at the time, and when I decided to go for UK Special Forces, before that, 100% for the Special Boat Service, you had to be Royal Marines only, and the army then used to go SAS, but they then opened this up now, tri-service. So I decided to go non-tradition and go for the Special Boat Service. Again, I was hit with a lot of excuses. Oh, you can't do that, you shouldn't be doing that, and I just totally ignored it. And I was successful in being one of the first army guys to go to the Special Boat Service. During a period, probably at the height of the War of Terror, I was literally doing everything that these boys and girls are doing on COD, Call of Duty. I was jumping out of planes, rescuing hostages. We were kicking down doors in Afghanistan. I was enjoying life, and I didn't think it could get any better. But then things change in a moment, and we're on a parachuting training course out in Oman, and as I exited the aircraft, I got my leg caught in the rigging line as I was exiting at 15,000 feet, and my leg got ripped over my head and to the right, and in an instant I knew my life had changed. My first challenge then was to actually land it, because at 15,000 feet you're on the limits of oxygen, so I was drifting in and out of consciousness. But I had to get to the DZ, which was about another 50 kilometers away, so 30 minutes in the air. I landed one-legged, great landing, but unfortunately that was the end of my military career. So everything I'd ever known since literally brought into this world was the military, up until the age of 32. I joined the military at 17. The military are like your mother, your father. They feed you, they clothe you, they pay you on time. They take away all those distractions so you can carry on with that normal job. So I now was then faced with sort of an alien environment I wasn't used to, which is the civilian environment. I also suffered a bit of an identity crisis. I was doing a job I loved. I was on the page. I was working within a close-knit team, and all of a sudden I was on my own. Fortunately, I had my wife, who's quite entrepreneurial. So things that I was starting to sweat about, council tax bans and things like that, she squared away all of that. She set up my first private security business on her mobile phone, watching EastEnders on Sunday. For me, that's like 3 months of paperwork and panicking. So my transition was quite smooth. My biggest worry is how I was going to support my family. And thankfully, within 48 hours of leaving the military, I was asked to go out to Libya and set up the British Embassy in Benghazi, because this was during the Arab Spring in 2011. And when I was out there, I was also trying to find a niche within the security industry. I was trying to find how can I, one of the ethos of Special Forces is the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. How am I going to take that mindset from the world of the military into this new role? When I was there, I soon identified that there was a lot of money going back and forth between NGOs, oil and gas companies, and a lot of these big security companies had these crisis management plans in place. But actually, when you started scraping on the surface, there wasn't really much in place as well. It was just a bit of a cover. So I flew home because my wife was 8 months pregnant, so I had to get back. My wife gave birth, and then I flew straight back into country. And my niche was evacuation plans. So I bought 30 weapons on the black market, as you do, and I buried them between Tunis and Egypt, and just wrote evacuation plan caches. No, evacuation from the sea, from the air, from land, and actually forgot about them, hoping I would never need them. I was here in London in 2012 for the Olympics doing security for visa, and went straight out to Libya afterwards. And I don't remember if there's a film made famous by a film called 13 Hours, where the American ambassador got killed. So I was in Benghazi at the same time that night as well, when it was all going down. So I was asked if I could assist with a German oil company and get them safely from Benghazi to Tripoli with my evacuation plan. I had safe houses in place, and yeah, that's what I did. I successfully got the oil workers back to Tripoli. Thankfully, never had to dig up any of the weapons. It was just knowing the right people in the right areas. Fast forward 2 more years, I'm in another sporting event, which is the World Cup in Brazil, and I then get a phone call from the Canadian embassy that they were stuck in Tripoli. It was now the Tripoli War, which is still ongoing at the moment. So I flew into Libya again, and I single-handedly evacuated the Canadian embassy from Libya back to Tunis, which was 18 military and 4 diplomats. Again, not having to dig up any of my weapons, it's just knowing the right people in the right places. A lot of people assume special forces, it's bullets and biceps. Yes, we have that in our arsenal, but actually, I think the success of my time in the security industry was understanding the demographics, and the politics in the country as well. If you just go in there heavy-handed, you're going to upset the locals. But if you actually sit there and eat with them and their families and start understanding what's going on in the background, it's actually just all about communication. So that again was a very successful project. I came home from that trip, and my wife then quickly made me aware that I'd only been home 21 days in a 365-day calendar. I sort of came back, and it was almost a throwaway comment that I'd evacuated the Canadian embassy, and she said, have you heard yourself? And what it is, I literally just disassociated or disconnected from the normal world, the society. My wife at this point is a property developer, so she said, look, you don't need to be taking these risks, you need to start thinking about your own mental well-being. And I'd actually, since leaving the military, I had neglected my own physical well-being, so I decided, right, I'll step away from the security industry, and I'll enter this new world of property developing. Bought a push bike, as you do, just bought a push bike off Amazon. I like Batman Lycra for £7, thought that looked quite good. It doesn't now. And I was just cycling to and from the office, only about 8 miles there and back. And after a month, you could probably imagine my face in these architects and planners meetings. I wasn't really interested in the heating system or the plumbing system of the building, especially from my sort of background. I was more interested in the coffee and the biscuits. And my wife could see that glaze again, and she said, right, you need to do something other than burying weapons in deserts. So I was fast approaching my 40th birthday. I was 39 at the time, and so she just threw me the Guinness Book of Records. She said, right, do something. So I found, I was thinking more Aberdeen to Dundee. It's only about 60 miles and back, but my wife then found the longest road in the world, which is the Pan American Highway. The Pan American Highway runs from southern Argentina to northern Alaska. It runs through 13 countries. It's 14,000 miles. It's the world's longest road. So, to put it in sort of context, it's like cycling from here to Sydney and then another 4,000 miles. It's like 15 Land's End John O'Groats. So, still having only cycled 20 miles, I thought, perfect. That's the project for me. So I applied for the world record, and Guinness came back 6 weeks later, said, yes, you've been successful on your application. And so then I had to think of a charity. So one of the charities that's close to my wife and my heart is modern slavery, human trafficking. So that's what potentially we were going to do it on. But name dropping now, being close friends with Prince Harry, I phoned him up and said, right, this is what I'm doing. And he said back in 2016, him and his brother and Kate were setting up a campaign called Heads Together, which was a mental health campaign, which pretty much I think everyone in the room's heard of it now. At the time in 2016, no one had really heard of it. I was aware of mental health in the military, but I wasn't aware how big an issue it was through all sectors. So we now had the challenge, and we now had the campaign. I was then asked how much you wanted to raise. I said £1 million, just spat it out, much to the disgust of my fundraising team. And and that was the birth of the Pan American Highway. I wasn't a cyclist. My sponsorship marketing team, when we did the SWOT analysis, the only weakness that came back was my arrogance towards the cycling community, which I then just took as a strength. But what I did is I just took everything I'd known from my time in the military and the private security and just dropped it into cycling. Fast forward to where we are now, the world record was 117 days. I did it in 99 days. We smashed both world records and became the first man in history to do it under 100 days. I still class myself as a novice cyclist. The success of that challenge was actually meticulous planning that went involved. It wasn't the endurance feat. It was that sort of taking the skills that I knew and then dropping it into that world. And so that was the Pan American Highway, which was complete last year.
There's some amazing parts behind that as well, aren't there? Where the deadline for getting the world record narrowed due to a competitive team on one side, but also a couple of invitations that you had. Yeah,
well, that was it. Yeah, so the world record was 100. Well, when I applied for the world record originally, it was 125 days. By the time Guinness had got back 6 weeks later, it was beaten by Juan Carlos in Mexico. So it was 117 days. So already, I'm now having to go faster. I actually aimed for 110 days, and the reason for that, it wasn't because I wanted to smash a week off the world record. It's because I if there's scenarios that are out of my control, third parties, natural disasters or coups, that if we came across any of them, it wasn't then affecting my challenge. I had that week fudge so we could eat into that, and I wasn't then chasing it. I did South America in 48 days, which was 10 days faster than the original record, and I then got to North America on day 70, and I'm 14 days ahead now of my target. By which point as well, physically and mentally, I'm getting stronger as we go. And I thought, perfect, I've got a day or two rest if I need it. And then my wife rang me and said, we've been kindly invited to Harry and Meg's wedding. If you're going to that wedding, you need to be home by day 102. So, mentally, I was now 14 days ahead. After that phone call, I was 1 day behind. So the luxury I had in North America, on paper we had it in 17 days to cycle North America. I did it in 11 and a half. There was an app on my phone called Windy TV, so I got to Texas the next day after the phone call, and we had 16-mile-an-hour winds and tornadoes. So I was stranded for 24 hours. So I'm now 2 days behind target. But there's an app on your phone called Windy TV, which gives you the strength and directions of the winds every hour forecasted for the next 2 weeks. And I just played chess with Mother Nature on Windy TV. I would cycle within those gaps in the wind. So I had to cycle 360 miles in the next 32 hours to miss the next weather front. Got to Cheyenne, picked a great tailwind, did 260 miles in 11 and a half hours, with 10,000 feet of climbing. So that's pretty much how much I did North America. I had the luxury of also cycling at night. I didn't have that luxury in Central and South America. So I think that aided it. And then I got a week outside and I thought, right, the world record's safe, and we're going to this royal wedding. I was then made aware of a professional cyclist, an Austrian triathlete sponsored by Red Bull, who wanted to be the first man to do the Pan American Highway in under 100 days. So I was like, oh my God. So I then just found out this information. So again, my objective had changed. So I cycled 22 hours in the last 30 hours in minus 18, to come in 99 days and 12 hours. So the original plan of 117 days to now 99 days. I think if I'd known about, the royal wedding and potentially this other guy, mentally would it have affected me? I don't know. But fortunately for me, by the time that information came to me, I could act on that. So, I did it in 99 days. I cycled 94. We had 5 days off, 3 due to weather, 2 due to logistics. It worked out 147 miles a day. I think my average speed was about 16.7 miles an hour. So I don't know if there's any cyclists in here, but it's actually that's actually quite fast.
It's going all right.
Yeah, it's going all right. But again, people talk about, you know, I like when I do a lot of my talking, 14,000 miles. If you looked at the 14,000 miles, you know, it just consumed you. You wouldn't even get on the plane. So you guys probably have your targets for your month, for the year. You know, it's quite daunting at the beginning of the year, but actually when you start then breaking it down, it's actually quite achievable. And that's what I did with this challenge. I didn't look at it as 14,000 miles. I broke it down into countries, and then countries into days, and broke the days into 4 stages. And I'd have my breakfast, because nutrition and hydration were key on this project. I'd have my breakfast and just cycle as fast as I could for 2 hours, and then I would stop at 30 minutes for food and water. But I'd make sure that I was quite disciplined in my timings, so I was back on that bike within 30 minutes. I wasn't having a selfie with a llama or chatting to the documentary team. And then I would just look at the next 2 hours. I would just cycle as fast as I could, and that's what I did. So for me, it was just 4 spinning sessions a day.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you've done a day, you've done the next day, you've done a week, and that's all I did. I didn't look at the bigger picture. I just looked at what was the next thing that was coming in front of me, and before you
know you're world record breaker.
Exactly, yeah, and you're just chipping away. You're just chipping away. I mean, you're getting more confident as well. You're getting fitter physically and also mentally.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point you make there, and you know, this series is all about taking the lessons and trying to work out how they can apply, because it is a great story, and it's fascinating stuff. But actually, what you want to do is take stuff out of it and say, right, how can we implement that?
Yeah. And
you talk a lot about planning in how that happened. You talk a lot then about chunking, so taking the task and breaking it down and putting those things into place. One of the things you've also spoken to me about in the past is the excuses and taking excuses off the table.
Yeah.
You know, when you're taking on those sort of things, there's every single opportunity to say, oh, yes, but, or this happened, or I can minimise it, or I've still done all right, etc., etc. And I think in our job, it's always quite tempting to say, yeah, you know, but I can catch that up, or I can do this, or you know, that happened, or this happened. How do you get into that mindset? You know, relentless is your word, right?
Relentless.
That's what you love talking about. Relentless means not giving up in that sort of stuff. It means not giving excuses. Tell us a little bit more about that side.
So I'm very objective driven. I have to have a target, and as you say, a lot of people will look at the outs, or, well, I can't do this. It's almost like, well, why not? I was asked at the beginning of the project, what if, because we were planning a huge event here in London, what if you don't do it? And I never used to answer that question, because I think if you have contingencies or see outs, people will take them when they get hard. You know, you talk about planning, you can have the best plan in the world. It's one of the things in the military, it's the best plan in the world to start shooting back. That wasn't in the plan. It's being able to adapt to the change in the plan. You know, if the road was smooth all the way, we'd all be on that road, but it isn't smooth. It has its ups and downs, it has its outs. It's just how you sort of deal with them. So one of the good things about the Special Forces, we're very sort of expeditionary. You know, you go into a country and there's nothing there. You know, you need to make those things happen. Whereas, no disrespect to the rest of the military, the Green Army, they need to know where they're going at what time. They have the kit in place. So
it's been an entrepreneurial aspect to the Special Forces, right?
Yeah,
which is why I think a lot of people go on from that to be quite successful entrepreneurs afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, it's just thinking out of the box. You know, when I got to Argentina, the shipping container was still in Chile, and then 75% of the kit was there. You know, and the rest of the team were like, well, we can't go, and I was like, well, why not? You know, we have enough kit to get going. So, you know, a lot of people may not have started and may have delayed 2 or 3 weeks, but when I went through Honduras, 2 or 3 weeks later, there was a coup. You know, they shut down the country. So I'm glad I didn't wait around. But yeah, I think people, when they set themselves targets, they automatically look at, well, I can't do that, and I sort of say, well, why not? And they'll try and make their own excuses. You know, with time management. You know, time management being a key one. But you just make time. The unrelenting pursuit of excellence is great ethos, because it's not just in military and sport. It could be in everything you do: recruitment, finance, you know, anything.
What does relentless mean?
Relentless is just not. Yeah, relentless, never giving up. Also, unrelenting pursuit of excellence. If you can safely say, you know, also a lot of people do in today's world, especially with social media, compare themselves to others. Don't compare yourselves to others. If you can safely say at the end of the day, you've given your 100%. That's the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. You know, do not compare yourselves to your upper next year. Again, that going back to that time management. You know, if you want to, for me, I had an objective each day. I see people on challenges now, and they're like, well, the winds are strong, so I'm going to stop 10 miles short. I'll catch that up tomorrow. For me, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You may even have stronger winds. You're then behind and you're catching up. For me, I like to finish on target. You know, mentally, it's a good place to start the next day, knowing that you're on target or ahead. So whether you stay in the office and do those extra 2 or 3 calls, you know, you're staying on target. But a lot of people quite easy sort of, well, you know, I'll catch it up tomorrow. But you just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and before you know it, you've been chasing yourself. Yeah. So always finish the day where you should be, or ideally ahead. Yeah. And it just helps you mentally when you start the next day. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you know next day, right, I've got 10 miles to do on top of whatever, it's not a nice feeling.
So you've always been, you spoke about it at the start, it's like proving people wrong and doing things that people say you can't do. Where does that come from?
I think it probably came from my father telling me I'd last 2 minutes in the military.
Yeah.
I think that's where it originally stemmed from, and I mean, was it then proving him wrong? I just don't like to get an argument with people, because a lot of people will be like, well, you can't do that, and you know, I don't want to sit there and argue, well, why not? You know, it's just, right, I'll go away and do it. Yeah. You know, we talked about the SWOT analysis with the cycling community. In fairness, no one in the cycling community said that. You know what I mean? It's just what people thought. But I think for me, I like to be the underdog, and I think it's a great achievement when you do prove people wrong. Yeah. You know what I mean? We managed to get a man on the moon, so why not? You know what I mean? We're an amazing breed, but a lot of people now are they are looking for their outs or their excuses, and you know what I mean? You know, just the only thing holding you back is yourself. You know, that's what I would say. So
with regards to that and people holding themselves back, it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset that you've adopted and come forward and said, right, okay, how far can I push myself and keep on doing that? You've got another challenge which is coming up, which gets even more bonkers. Yeah. In terms of what you're going to do, which is, well, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Yeah.
So my USP is I will take a challenge that I've never done before and find the biggest. So I still class myself as a novice cyclist. I'm not, you know, if you see me on the roads, you know, you think I'm still about Billy age 5. I just go for it. So the next challenge is to kayak the River Nile from source to sea. It's never been done before, from Rwanda all the way up to Egypt. And already,
there's reasons why.
And there's reasons why, and I can see why people that, well, their excuses are crocodiles, hippos, civil war in South Sudan. I get that, but I'm sort of, you know, well, what can we do to achieve it? So I set off in March next year.
That's official now, is it?
That's official, yeah. We were going to set off in January, but we're just waiting a couple of months. We've got some big backers.
Because of hippo season and all that.
Well, I don't think there's any seasons. Yeah. So, but the next charity campaign is for modern slavery and human trafficking. So we've got like UNICEF, Save the Children, all on board. We will be fundraising, but that won't be the main objective. Raising £1 million was harder than the challenge itself. So going back, we handed over £900,000 on the last challenge, and that was just harder than the cycling itself, where this is going to be more about education. You know, it's the $150 billion industry in the world, modern slavery, human trafficking, and you know, I think we just turn a blind eye to it. There's 45 million slaves in the world. You know, there's 33 million in Asia alone. Right? Wow. Yeah, it's massive. You know, and I think it's going to be the shock and awe when we start putting things out on social media. It's actually going to, you know, for example, when I talk to people, there's 80 brothels in Aberdeen. Yeah. People are like, what? Yeah, there's 80 brothels in Aberdeen, and people, I think society just turn a blind eye to it. But I think a lot of corporates now need to, especially a lot of these big companies, if you turn over 36 million plus, you have to have the Modern Slavery Act, you know, on your website. Yeah. A lot of them are box ticking at excise, but they're not following it through. Yeah. You know, so having audits, you know, your supply chain, are they all adhering to that modern slavery? Yeah. It's going to be a big one. It's actually going to be it's going to actually, you know, shock and awe. It's going to be.
I've seen your as you were talking, I've seen your hands. Looks like you've been doing a bit of training on it, right?
Yeah, I need to toughen my hands up. I've got blisters all over my hands. Yeah, so just slowly trying to toughen them up. Yeah.
Getting towards it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about your time in the Special Forces, and then, you know, these tasks afterwards. If you're to sort of box some of the sort of key traits that you've learned over that period and say, look, to set yourself up to be successful in life, and you can take 3-4 things away from that and say, look, this, whatever you're doing, if you follow this sort of protocol, you're going to do better than other people. What will be the sort of gems that you take away from that?
I think the main one is believe in your plan. You know, you have a plan, believe in it. You know, we've talked about the plan doesn't always go to plan. You know, but believe in your plan, and others believe it. Will believe in it as well. I think surrounding yourself with the right team, support network is huge. You know, the success of my challenge. You saw me on the bike, but I had a great support network around me. You know, the vehicles, we couldn't get some of the vehicles had to get shipped from Florida down to Panama for the second stage, and my wife got a phone call saying they hadn't been loaded on. So my wife, you know, a lot of people, well, you know, that's the end of the challenge. My wife and my PA flew out and drove the vehicles 4,000 miles in 8 days to get there, you know, so we could carry on. I see a lot of projects now where people are failing, and it's not because of the mindset of the person on the challenge, it's the mindset of the team around them. It's that negative attitude. So surround yourself with positive. I'm not saying yes, we're going to do it, but they generally believe that you're going to do it. But I think that support network's key. You know, I genuinely believe that anyone in this room can break a world record. You know, people laugh when I say that, but genuinely do believe that anyone in this room can, because if you take away all those distractions, you know, your mortgage, your work, you know, everything else, my wife does that for me. I mean, you have that support from your family, then it's achievable. So yeah, surround yourself with the right people. Time management is key. I'm really, you know, on my first challenge was quite easy because I had nothing going on. I was just cycling. This time round is a lot more, you know, difficult, writing books, doing audio books, having meetings,
being here,
you know, I mean, all these sort of distractions. But you know, I got up an extra hour.
We got a river out there for you.
Well, exactly. So I got up an extra hour early. I mean, you know, got on the rowing machine. So it's that time management, and confidence. You know, believe me, I think confidence as well. You know, I mean, I do think, the biggest problem we have today is social media. People comparing themselves to others. You know what I mean? Just believe in yourself.
Believe in what you're going to do. Let's focus on time management a little bit, because it's definitely a skill which people talk about, and it's a key thing. And when I talk to a number of people, it's right. I haven't got enough time in a day, or what's time management mean to you? How do, you know, it's something which everyone says, look, if you're good at time management, it's there, but no one's really got a sort of way of absolutely dominating time management and doing that without saying, right, okay, I'm just going to put in an extra half day which isn't there, and that's not sustainable for some people. For some people, for other people, it's fine. For some
everyone's unique. Everyone has their own, you know, their own
thresholds.
families, you know, travel times and things like that. It's just obviously looking at routine. You know, this is my normal routine. It's like, where can I grab an hour here and an hour? And there isn't enough hours in a day, as we all say. There isn't enough hours in a day, but it's sometimes you just have to be disciplined. You know, you get up that extra hour earlier, and then you then train in, or you know, just before you go to bed. Right, what is it? What are my objectives for today? Have I hit those objectives? No. And you know, that's what I tend to do. There's a great little book called Zelo I have, and I write in there. It says your 3 objectives for the next 6 months, and then you have your objectives for the day. But you don't write objectives for the next day until you.
It's like a diary.
It's like a diary, and a lot of people tend to do
Zelo.
A lot of people tend to do the easy jobs first. You know, it's always good doing the easy job. You feel like you're ticking off a lot of your list, when in fact it's the big jobs that need the more time.
Nadia was talking the other day about eating the frog, getting the big task done early, the difficult task done.
Get the difficult task done early, and that's in the Zelo book as well, actually. So that's what I do. I just go on that, and then at the end of the week, there's actually a page there. Right, did you achieve your objectives? If not, what would you do differently? You start looking at patterns. So after probably about a month, you'll get to know your routines, and then that's where your time management comes in.
So we talk a little bit about habit tracking, sort of building habits sustainably over 21-day periods or whatever it might be. It's kind of the same sort of thing, isn't it? So making sure that every single day you're doing what you need to do, you're getting to where you want to go, and you're moving yourself forward constantly. And that review afterwards is a critical part of it. Yeah, massively. The other area you talked about, which I think is really important, particularly in the recruitment business, is about putting the right team around you and all that sort of thing. So if you're going to make put the makeup of a team around you, and in the cases of some of the things you've been doing, that's life and death as opposed to just nice to have, or the nearest available people, or whatever it might be. If you were to put a life and death team around you, what are you looking for in that team?
Obviously, ideally you'd want the experts in all those fields, but you're not going to get that. Quite a difficult question. For me, it's not about ideally you'd like people who've experienced or got experience in those fields. For me, it's people who are willing to learn or think out of the box.
Yeah.
They're the sort of people I want around me.
Yeah.
Just having that positive.
And how do you know about
action.
people who think outside the box? Where's that come from in an individual?
It just comes from the gut, your sixth sense. The
Yeah.
majority of the stuff I do is actually on my gut.
Yeah.
You just get a feel for someone, and obviously recommendations and things like that. I was recommended certain people on my support team on my last project. That I didn't know the people, so I sort of went on those recommendations, and I had to get rid of them.
Yeah.
In South America. So this time round it's a lot more different. I need to get. For me, I'm quite fortunate. My support network is my wife.
Yeah.
And she does that filtering.
Yeah.
Rather than me. She knows people better than I do.
Yeah.
So she sort of does that for me.
So you talked there about expertise in certain areas, which is obviously important in that sort of space. But then there's this sort of conversation that rages indefinitely about talent or experience and such like, and investing in people who've done it, who might be jaded or whatever it is, or bringing people in who have got the energy and passion but not necessarily the skills to get to that sort of stage. You intimated it a little bit there with attitude and such like. Where would you put yourself in that sort of category, or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both. I'd say it's a bit of both. I was sort of thinking about going back to your original question, like your support network in Libya, for example. The guy, my fixer, is a guy who owns a internet shop in Worcester. He's a 60-year-old Libyan. He's got nothing to do with the military at all, but he just knows Libya, and and the right tribes. He's from the right tribe. People think, oh, you've got an armed team around you. When in fact, I've got a 60-year-old guy from Worcester who's got an internet shop. So it's not the team you'd think it would be, but it's the team who have that experience, have that knowledge, and those sort of connections as well. I think people underestimate certain people. So the amount of people I come across who know such and such or can open doors. And my biggest challenge for me at the moment is social media. Very much a taboo in the special forces.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my PA, a younger girl willing to learn, is all over it.
Yeah.
So
it's been more. I see it building out more.
Yeah.
And more
So I
and
think
more
you sort of identify. You have to be honest with yourself. Do SWOT analysis on yourself. What are my weaknesses?
Yeah.
My weaknesses are social media. Very quick to judge people.
Yeah.
I love it when I've been pleasantly surprised. So you need to find them and see how you can bolster those weaknesses. Who can come in and assist you on your weakness? 'Cause I know where my strengths lie.
Yeah.
I don't need another person who's very similar to me, but I need someone who can assist me with my weaknesses.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that about the quick to judge people and getting the wrong sort of sides of it, because you mentioned there the biceps and bullets aspect, but there's also a lot there. Whenever I've spoken to special forces people, there's been a very strong ability to be people.
Yes.
Effectively, right?
It's
people who get the best out of people, who understand and don't necessarily go in antagonistically, but go in a it's a negotiation first sort of stance for it all.
That's it, yeah.
But that's a weakness for you.
No, I don't think it's a weakness at all. Everyone has this perception of the special forces that will swing through the window, abseil through with big guns, and there'll be lasers everywhere. Actually, that's only a very small part of what we do. The majority of the part we do is hearts and minds.
Yeah.
It's actually going into countries, sitting down with the people, understanding the atmospherics of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I was successful in the security industry. I would go in, they would get emails from security companies in London and New York, like we offer these services, there's thousands of them. If you're willing to take that risk, go in and see them face to face, they see that you're taking those risks. Again, I always moan about media. The media throw things totally out of proportion. They make out these places to be war-torn and horrible places to go, and in fact, they're amazing places to go. But yeah, we are in the special forces hearts and minds, and it's not all about door kicking. It's understanding the demographics and the politics and everything else. And if you get that right and you understand the country well enough, you don't need to do any of that. In the private security, especially, you've gone from being, as I say, the bravest in the world to being the biggest cowards, because you don't want any sort of confrontation. If there is confrontation, you haven't done your job correctly.
Yeah.
It's being able to identify an issue or a scenario and go around it.
I'm going to ask you on that hearts and mind. I'm going to open it up to everyone in a second. So if you've got a question, start preparing it now. But hearts and minds is a massive thing, I think, in any business, and particularly in our business. There are people there, not quite in such an aggressive way, but people have barriers and doors, and there's lots of people asking the same sort of things. And the people who will work with you will be the ones where you do capture their hearts and minds. Yeah. From your experience of doing it in pretty hostile situations, what's the best way of doing that, of winning a heart and mind?
I think for me, being a white person, for example, Somalia. Yeah. I was asked to go into Somalia. I went into Somalia on my own, and rather than going down the normal route of going staying on the airfield, US Air Base, everything else, I just grabbed my case and walked up the high street straight to the hotel. Straight away, people were just like, that is the initial thing. Is that your first impressions, right? This guy is different. Me just sitting there. The big communication barrier is this. You could be emailing a guy there, but actually sat there having dinner with him and his family. That's winning hearts and minds.
So get in front of people and start building a relationship.
You can't gauge. You can't gauge people on emails and things like that. You can only gauge. So
easy to misread everything.
Oh yeah, I misread emails all the time. I'm like, they've been arsey. Yeah. And in fact, they're just probably so busy trying to get through their tick box for the day. And but you sort of. It takes more time. It does take a lot more time than just firing out an email. Yeah. But that's how I
taking
gauge.
More time can make a much better relationship, which gives it
exactly. And that's where I was quite successful in winning my contracts. Yeah. Is that you've taken the risk. You've come out here. You've seen what it's all about. Like for example, Somalia. When we were there in Mogadishu, we then went south of Mogadishu and we were then free diving for lobsters and putting on a barbecue. Some of the best seafood I've had in the world. But again, people's perception because of media. Yeah. It's two big things. And what I'm really trying to promote as well with my book and moving forward is everyone's very quick to tarnish the Muslim community with one brush. Just because of what they're seeing on TV, they're all bad and things like that. It's absolute rubbish. It's only a very, 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 very small minority. The success of all my stories wouldn't have been successful if it wasn't for that local community helping me. Yeah. And that's what I'm really keen in pushing across as well.
Become part of that community.
Exactly.
And throw yourself into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I'm going to throw it open for a couple of questions. Anyone got anything that they want to ask?
Yeah, so interested about the elements around excellence and the way that obviously it's important in the special forces and obviously the people you surround yourself with. How do you go about spotting that talent element, which is quite untangible, in knowing that somebody's going to be able to strive for that excellence?
Yeah, I think spotting a talent, it depends on where they are in their lives and careers. Obviously someone who's very successful, he's got a talent. But I like the raw talent. It's the attitude of the person, and that's what I'm looking for is more commitment. Because it's like you can. Well, you're talking about the Kingsman earlier. You're just taking a guy from a rough estate, and then the right support network around him and the right education. I think you can train anyone if they've got the right attitude. Attitude is massive. So everyone has it in them to be excellent. You just need to have the right attitude. So that's how I would do it.
I've got two questions for you. First thing earlier on you spoke about catching the target for today. Yeah. So making sure you achieve whatever you wanted to achieve in that 2-hour period. Yeah. Sometimes in this environment, it's very difficult to do. Yeah. Something pops up, a new job turns up, you have someone coming for an interview, whatever it may be, that's unexpected. Yeah. So how did you deal with those unexpected things that you had planned for, that weren't in your control, and where perhaps you didn't catch that target for today? How did you reassess that for the next day or the next 2-hour block?
For me, it was quite easy. Well, on the bike, you mean? For me, it was just to spend more time on the bike. So for me, I could plan my day. So is there any cyclists in the room? Does anyone do any cycling?
Put your hand up.
Put their hand up. I'd love to see James in Lycra. So for me, I would be able to gauge the rest of the day by my first 2 hours. So here, if you go cycling around in UK, you tend to do a circle. So at some point you'll have a headwind, and at some point you'll have a tailwind. For me, if I had a headwind, I had a headwind all day. If I had a tailwind, I had a tailwind all day. So for me, it was quite easy on that. I would then, on my first 2 hours, if it was a headwind, I would then do another 30 minutes, and then the next 3 stages of that day were 2.5 hours, so I just adjusted to it. But if I didn't hit my target for the day, I would just stay on the bike until I did. For me, mentally, I couldn't say, right, I'll catch that up tomorrow. I had to hit those objectives. So, but as you rightly put there, it's not as easy as saying, well, this is my plan for today, because like I said, plan always never goes to plan. There's always these, issues and things like that. So it's just then going back to it, right, where was I? Before you knock off a day, right, have I achieved those objectives?
Yeah. I think that's a really, really translatable point. And the key to it there is effectively you do what you've got to do and you extend it to where it wants to see. I've seen, the best recruiters I've ever seen in the same sort of scenarios is, and I always put this over to, it's particularly relevant to contract recruitment. Is a job comes in at the end of the day. In fact, I'll tell a story if I may. I'm not hijacking your thing. There was a guy who worked for us in the very, very early days of this business, and we spent a whole day going out, and we had business that would have. We went out and I spent my whole day with him, pulling jobs that were collectively worth to him personally tens of thousands of pounds, and we were talking all day in between the meetings about what it would be worth and what would happen for it, etc., etc. And it was a massive opportunity at the start of his career for this, very early on in his career. And we came back to the office and. Saying, look, this is what you can do, and this is this opportunity. And I sat there and I looked up on my desk at 6:01, and he was just careering out the door. He lasted about a week longer than it. But it was a guy there who was talking about wanting to be something, and the actions and activity that was there alongside it were completely different. Yeah. And I think sometimes when you get those opportunities and you see things in front of you, you've got to put yourself in that situation to push it a little bit harder than there, and I think we see that. I think we see that all the time with people in this office. I see it consistently with the best performers in this industry. That, look, I'm not saying everyone has to be here till God knows when every single day, but when you've got an opportunity or when you're behind target, when you're doing things, you've got to change something different to do that. And I saw it yesterday with a couple of people in this office. I've seen it with people who've been successful this month. People who are successful generally deserve to be successful because they're putting in what they need to do to get to that sort of phase. So I completely agree with that. Anything else out there?
Just in terms of measuring success, you talked about on your bike ride, obviously you've got distance to do and there's the days that you do it in, the amount of money you're going to raise. That's the equivalent of kind of our financial targets, numbers of jobs, sort of stuff. When you talk about your kind of upcoming Nile project, and the purpose of that isn't to raise a specific amount of money, but it's to educate people. Yeah. That's much less black and white. There's not a number, there's not something there. No. That equates to a number of different things in our business in terms of that mentorship and leadership and esprit de corps and that sort of thing that you can't measure by a number that you hit or not hit. No. When you talk about the purpose of it being education, how do you plan to measure that, whether you've done a decent job? How do you measure that success when it isn't as black as white or white as hit that number or didn't hit? Yeah, true.
I imagine it's obviously the reach and the reaction. The fortunate thing we got with this challenge, the last challenge, you can imagine me going into some of these meetings for sponsorship. I've never cycled before. I'm going to cycle the world's longest road, break 2 world records and raise £1 million for mental health. A lot of people thought I had mental health problems myself, but some people got it. That was almost a CV. This time round, I've seen a massive shift in attitude. Everyone I've spoken to, it's not, I'm speaking to, I call them the gatekeepers. I'm now talking to the CEOs, and they're like, right, what can we do to help you? We'll use our media team and things like that. So I've got the luxury this time of putting that sort of emphasis onto them. It's up to them to do, to get that message out. So I think gauging it successfully wise, we just don't know. We'll see. We just don't know where it's going to take. We've got we're talking documentaries. I can't really name names, but we've got some. There's A-listers and there's these people getting behind it as well. So it will have the maximum reach. My objective is to just paddle.
Survive it.
It's survive, yeah. My objective is to say what I'm going to do, and that's get from A to B. Unlike the PAH campaign, which was a charity to raise £1 million for Heads Together campaign, this, it's called Breaking Chains, is a campaign, and the NAL is just a project to raise awareness for it. Once I've finished the NAL, the campaign is going to carry on with all those charities underneath. So it's very much a different model from the last one. We still will be fundraising, but what we've asked is all of the charities to almost highlight a campaign that they want to focus on, and then the funding will come in for that. Again, the 900,000 on the last one, people like, wow, how did you raise so much money? And I wasn't, for me, it was, it wasn't, I only raised 30,000 from the general public because I showed no emotion. My PR team said at the end, it's like, you just showed no emotion. It was like a military operation. I said, it was. Yeah, it was, yeah. The unrelenting pursuit of excellence is what I was trying to promote. Whereas like Zoe Ball, she cycled 100 miles, cried every mile and raised 250 grand. And that geezer from Radio 1 who couldn't do his 3 peach challenge, had a little bit of a meltdown, raised £1 million. So I missed the trick. I should start crying in Peru and called it a day. But that wasn't what I was trying to do. I think people like to see people suffering, and that's when they put their hands in their pockets. But what I was trying to promote was the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. But if you're going to do something, do it to the best of your ability. And I always say, don't compare yourselves to others. I wasn't comparing myself to other cyclists. I still don't look like a cyclist nowadays. Yeah. So, but it's a good question though. I don't know how we're going to gauge success on that one. For me, it's probably the global reach. I didn't really know how successful the last challenge was. One of my sponsors I spoke to recently, she sort of said it's the waterfall effect you don't see. It's you came in, did a talk, you did that. The amount of people in the office who then went and did their own mini challenges. So you can't really gauge success. It's just these other stories you hear later on. So, but no, it's a good question. I haven't really thought about it
But one more in over there.
First of all, Ali wife, fair play.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think it's a really good thing to kind of share. What was your hardest part of selection? How did you overcome it?
Hardest part of selection. I enjoyed selection because I was going through a divorce at the time and a custody case of my child. So it was the only place solicitors couldn't get hold of me for 6 months. So I actually quite enjoyed the environment. Selection is, with anything, even with this challenge as well, it's 80% mental, 20% physical. And that's why, if you have the right mental attitude, I think with special forces selection, if you can avoid injury, you're 50% of the way there. And they always say, I know it's cliche, the instructors say you'll fail yourself, we won't fail you. The instructors have this sort of mindset. The first phase of selection is the hills, is the physical aspect, which they call probation. They don't even know your name until after that. But the jungle phase is where the majority of the guys go, and they actually go because they take themselves off. The instructors are telling them they're not good enough, and they're actually believing them. Whereas it's almost, you just got to have this sort of arrogance, I'll be all right. So selection for me, I think the hardest thing was the time period. 6 months, is a long time. By the end, you just wanted to join your squadron, and then you have that sort of that lull at the end. You think you're on the top of the world, and all this. For you, 6 months, you've achieved. You're in the most elite club in the world, and then you start your first day, and you're like the coffee boy. You're like, means nothing, and that's it. That just gets you to the start point. But for me, was the duration of the course. Trying to stay focused for that long period of time. But there's a reason. I can't go into the selection process and why they do it, but they do it for a reason, because that is, you're going to be your bread and butter when you work within the squadrons. They are relentlessly long days, and relentlessly hard, and always the pursuit of excellence. Repeating. You do rehearsals for rehearsals, so that on the day of the race it's just second nature. What you do just seems natural. I always get questions, people, how do you cope under this? And you don't really think about it, because you've done it so many times. It just becomes second nature. And selection's a great process in sort of identifying the guys for it. And I think it's about 4 to 5% pass selection from those that actually go in. So, but yeah,
I think this is not to trivialise that at all, which is difficult, and not to glamorise what we do by the same rationale. But that yes, we've spoken to Floyd a lot, but Floyd Woodrow, I think I've connected you with in the past.
Yeah.
The thing that they talk about is that sort of planning and prepping and training and testing under pressure and all that sort of stuff. So when the when the event happens, you've done it, and you've done it in harder conditions than actually when it's there. In the military, it's about training for those situations. In civilian life, in our world, those situations are happening every day, and I think what you've got to do is take every single call as that training thing and think about how you can improve it every single time. And the bit that relates to me on this and how I've sort of translated it into my head is there are people there who will make 20 calls in a day, and there's people there who are making 100 calls in a day. And those people who are doing 100 are getting 5 times the experience within that. So when they're there and they're having that situation, or they've had more issues with a deal or more scenarios with an interview or whatever it might be, they've got that extra that extra experience because they've put themselves in the position to get that extra experience. So they're suddenly elite compared to someone else's, ordinary. And I think there's no other way of doing that sort of thing other than putting yourself in that situation. And that's the way I've always translated that particular bit from the constant repetition of the military into how you take that into what we do.
I think one thing, especially in the special forces, we do well is we learn from our mistakes. Every time we come off the ground, it's a debrief. So you have a hot debrief straight away while it's still fresh in your mind, and then the next day you'll have a more detailed debrief. But it's that whole, if I did that again, what would I do different, and why would I do it differently? You know, for me on the Pan America Highway, I spoke to the previous world record holders. I got their information. You know, if you did it different, what would you do? And then I collated my own plan. Every one of them went from Alaska down to Argentina. You know, from the information I got, I formulated my plan. I went from Argentina to Alaska because all their issues were in South America and Central America. The highest climbs, the windiest, the hottest deserts were all in the south. Why take a gamble for the second half? So the special forces are very good at that. And we're not the experts at everything. We're always learning. We're always sharing information. You know, some of these. Again, the TVs, you collate that information, but you don't. But for us, it's a different environment. I was talking alongside, I was guest speaking alongside Lawrence Delalio about high performance teams. He was talking about how they repeat 100 times to get that 1% better. And then I went up and did my one, and I said, we train. But for us, should we make a mistake, someone will die. We won't, won't lose 3 points on a rugby pitch. You know what I mean? And Lawrence was like, you made me feel that small. But that's just the reality of life. You know, that's why we do it, because we want to be the best.
You have to,
you have to.
I think that's one of the big parts of the military is that quality of debrief and that information. And we've spoken about that at various different stages. And I still think that if you're there, and be it on yourself on your way home and thinking what could I have done better, or in your teams and at the kickoffs every single day, if you're looking and saying, right, okay, where can we have improved? It's a massive, massive win. Dean, look, we could be speaking for forever about all this sort of stuff. It's stuff I love talking about, and look, I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say massive, massive thank you for coming in again and sharing this sort of stuff. I hope to everyone here that you've taken stuff away from it that you can put into your day, and just think about a few of those themes. Think about because everything that Dean's talked about there, despite the fact he's done some incredible stuff, isn't superhuman. It is just taking that sort of mindset and putting it into your desk, and you can either do things that are day to day, you can do things that everyone else does, or you can do it to the absolute best of your ability. And as you said, that if you're doing that on a day by day basis, you'll start to push towards excellence, and I firmly believe that. So listen, from me, I'm sure from the team, a massive thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.